So the Netflix Punisher series came out last week, and I've obviously finished it. I wanted to finish it the first night, but like had to, get up early and volunteer at my kids' school and shit like that. Just completely unreasonable things. So it took me about 5 days to watch all 13 episodes. So I am a crazy Punisher fan. Like I probably, in terms of the proportion of Punisher comics I own more of the Punisher comics that exist than I own of the Wonder Woman comics that exist. And that's partly because the Wonder Woman comics, I don't collect the Golden Age ones. But yeah, so I am actually a massive Punisher fan. I don't have a Punisher tattoo down my arm like that. I have one planned, but I guess because of the imagery and that, I have to be a bit more careful about what I would get tattooed. But if you know me, my gym hat is Punisher hat, and I have like Punisher hoodie and things like that. So I'm kind of a Punisher nut. So I was really, really excited about this series coming out. I've seen the Punisher movie with Thomas Jane and Punisher Warzone. I have not seen the original with Dolph Lundgren. So I don't know, maybe I'm not enough of a Punisher fan, but I have all the comics and shit. So I was super excited. So Punisher, for those that don't know, he was in, I'll do a bit on the character, but Punisher was in the second series of Daredevil as well, and Jon Bernthal, we're drawing a blank. Johnny B plays him. And I wasn't sure when I heard he was going to do it. I was like, I don't know, is he going to be good enough? In some ways, because he's quite wiry, whereas in the comics sometimes Frank Castle, which is the Punisher, Frank Castle is a bigger build. But then I saw that second series of Daredevil and I was like, yep, he's nailing it. And that has continued. He is just absolutely nailing this character. I'm so happy with that casting. I think he's just doing such a great job. So those who don't know, so the Punisher is a man called Frank Castle. He's a veteran. Now, depending on the comic, it changes which conflict he's a veteran of. So in this series, he's an Afghanistan veteran, and he's a Marine. He's always a Marine. In probably my favourite comics, he's a Vietnam veteran. So, but it just depends. So he's a veteran, he has this family, he has Maria, and he has 2 children, a boy and a girl, and he comes back from a deployment. It doesn't really matter which one, it changes throughout the comics, and depending on the medium, depending on the story, they die, and depending on which the story, the way that they die changes. So generally it's that there's a mafia hit gone wrong, and it kills the family and it injures him, but he survives, but his family's died, and then he gets this like vendetta against organised crime. So in the Netflix series, what it actually is that he what he finds out is that it was a hit aimed at killing him that happened to kill his family, and he happened to survive, took a bullet to the brain but happened to survive. And so then the vendetta is about finding out who did that and why. And there's a whole thing there. I won't go into the whole thing. It's a really interesting story though. Well, I thought it was a really interesting story. And it's kind of about that little, I guess, finding out who did it and then, funny enough, punishing them. Yeah, so they did there. So I really, really enjoyed it. Now, the first thing I would say is this is nothing like any of the other Marvel movies. It's nothing like the Marvel movies, and it's not really anything like those other series. It has very little wider reflection on the Marvel universe, which is true of most Punisher stories. He does interact with other people, but he's just based in New York. He's just doing his thing. So the Punisher as a character came about as a Spider-Man villain. Now he is really a vigilante. But so he does interact with it, but in the Netflix series he doesn't interact at all. So don't view it thinking you need to know about superheroes. You don't. It's just a crime thing. And the other thing I'd say is it is super violent. So these comics are always super violent. And if you like this series, I would say read the Garth Ennis Punishers, so Punisher Max. They are fantastic. They're my absolute favourites, and that's where my tattoo will come from. But they are super violent. So this is not for kids in any way, and this is actually probably, if you have like people in your life that like are a bit squeamish about blood and things like that, it's not for those kind of adults either. So I won't give anything away. I'll deliberately do this without spoilers. But there's, I think the first episode, there's a sequence in the first episode towards the end, and that will kind of tell you whether you can handle this or not. And if you can't handle that that final sequence, you definitely can't handle what's coming in later episodes. So just to keep that in mind with viewing it. So the characterization is good. There's a bit of a support cast. So Karen Page is back in this. She's from Daredevil. I actually hated her in Daredevil, but I don't mind her in this. And there's Micro. Micro is a bit different to what he is in the comics, but it's still a similar character, similar role, and there's a bit more supporting stuff with his family, and that's all very interesting as well. And the villains I liked. I thought the villains were really compelling. There's people that you're not sure about, that they're kind of a bit morally ambiguous, and you're trying to figure out where they fit into things and whether they're going to protect Frank, whether they're not going to protect Frank. And each time that happens, it's always interesting. The way it plays out is always interesting. So yeah, at times I could predict what would happen, and part of that is that some of these characters are based off comic book characters. But even if I knew what would happen, I couldn't always tell how it would happen. So that was, I found it engaging anyway. There were only two things that I didn't like about this, and I won't go into too much detail about that, but the first one is so generally I would say that this series has a really good take on veterans. So, and this doesn't give anything away, it's in the first episode. One of Frank's friends from when he was a Marine runs like a veteran support group. And I find there's like a few different people in there. Some are getting on with their lives, but they've got some issues. Some are doing really well and have no issues. And they're not even in the support group, they just come visit. And some are struggling. And I like that. I like that we see people being successful, and that, you know, these experiences don't necessarily break you as a human being. Some people make the most out of them. Some people move on from them. Some people have really challenging experiences, but they grow from them. But one of the characters, I feel like his take is kind of a stereotype. It's kind of a veteran stereotype, and I didn't like how that played out. But it is a show about a vigilante, and you need an antagonist. So I get that. And the other thing that I didn't like, and I won't say what it is, but for the most part I absolutely loved this. I loved how the series progressed. I really enjoyed it. The very final scene, if you've seen it, the very final scene didn't sit right with me as someone who loves the Punisher. So it was good for the series, and it was a good little, there's growth there, and that's exciting, but it's not the Punisher, and I don't understand how you can keep having the Punisher if you have that particular scene. That doesn't really make any sense to me. But overall I did really love it, and I'd watch it again, like probably now. I could start watching it now. Don't have to volunteer tomorrow.